Slinging seeds, sliding on into home, throwing heat, buddy, we're going, gone. If you gotta go down, you gotta go down, swinging, slinging seeds. It's America's favorite pastime. Come on, let's have a good time, slinging seeds. Yeah, we're just slinging seeds.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week of Slinging Seeds. I'm your host, Kyle Evans. This is my co-host, Doug Adams. Today our special guest is Ian Bach. Doug, you want to go ahead and give us a little bit of background on Ian today?
Yeah, for sure. So Ian obviously has the podcast Bach Talk, which I love watching and I've watched or listened to for years. Went to Covington Catholic in Kentucky. Went to Owens Community College. Ended up playing at Earlham with SAC. They had a really good team over there. And then got with the Reds and Astros in the professional game. And now he's running basically a college style or pro style analytics department for Moeller.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to, come on here and just chat. And, I never deny or will never not, take this opportunity to talk about baseball and, promote Moeller Baseball analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to start with a little bit of you as the player.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you went to Owens, so you had the JUCO experience. You went to Earlham. I think you played 2 years at Earlham.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you're certified with strength and conditioning and all that fun stuff as well. So what advice would you give to the high school player with what you learned through your playing career, now on the coaching side, the development side? What advice would you give to that high school freshman to be the most successful as he can be over the next 4 years?
I think the number one thing is you really need to think about what you want to do. How invested are you into this game? Do you want to be, where do you want to be? Do you want to be a professional player? That's the number one question. You have to set a goal, and how do you get to that goal is what I always tell guys. I'm like, do you really want to invest in this? And if it's yes, then okay, how much time do you want to put into it? Are you willing to put in all these specific hours? And if those boxes are all checked off, then we can really go into, the weeds of everything. So how are you training? Specifically, how much are you in the weight room? How much are you hitting? How much are you pitching? That's the other thing, is how much time are you going to put into it? I think with a lot of guys, my biggest advice was, you really have to take control of your own career. I think a lot of guys go off their coaches and, they don't want to put their own effort into what they want to do. You go off your coaches, they're like, you need to do this, you need to do that. You need to really take advantage of what you're doing, specifically in the case of, a great example is in junior college, it's free game.
Mm-hmm.
Your coaches can only do so much. So you really have to, get your own plan. Say I want to get bigger, faster, stronger. I have to get that program and I have to go into the weight room all the time. I have to plan out. I have to plan on my recovery. I need to do all that. And then specifically, what am I doing for hitting? I have to create a plan. So I'm a very big person about planning out. So that's why I was, coming back into the circle. What is the goal? Then how can we plan towards that goal? And if you want to put in all that time, that's what you're going to have to do. And that's what a lot of kids don't realize is it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of compromise with your own self. And you have to realize at the end of the day, you can put in all this work and it might not happen. But you got to realize, what are you trying to get out of all your playing career? Are you trying to get the most you possibly can? So that's kind of the best advice I would give for guys is you just really have to be honest with yourself. But, going more into the details, for example, strength and conditioning, the number one thing you got to do is you have to get strong. But what does that mean? It means you need to build functional movements. So if you can't do a push-up, if you can't do a squat, if you can't laterally move, if you can't rotate, if those aren't checked off, then you need to get them checked off ASAP. And that happens by repetition, repetition, repetition. So I'm a very big proponent of doing things over and over and over, like people, you have all these new devices like velocity-based training, you have hit tracks, you have force plates. These are all great, but like you need to get the basics down. Rotate, jump, push, press, hinge. And if you can't do any of those, like I said, you have to get all those boxes checked off. So if I could give like advice in that sense in the weight room, is you need to get those, up to date. You need to get those incorporated, and they take a lot of time. Like for example, like we're here in Top Velocity. You have that giant board. If a guy wants to go over to that board, and they see their height and weight, and these are the numbers they have to hit, like that gives you specifically what you need to do. And if you can't hit those numbers, that's work right there. That's a plan. Like
It's a base foundation.
how am I going to get to, yeah, exactly. And that's what a lot of guys don't realize is that in order to, do anything in this life at the end of the day, is you have to have that foundation, whether it be, baseball, everyday life, or even, like what you're doing currently. You're an entrepreneur. You have to build that foundation in business and understand what you're doing. And if you don't have that foundation set, like it's not going to work. That's a very long-ended answer. That's just
No, that was actually right on the money. I mean, you couldn't have given us a better answer. I guess, in a follow-up question, a lot of the time we talk about ceilings with freshmen, and that worries some guys. How do you deal with that hypothetical?
for the ceilings based on, this is how far they can reach. You don't, the thing that's hard is like, you don't really know what an inner guy's ceiling is.
Right.
So for example, me, like I'm a very unathletic person. I've had to work very hard all the time. Like for me, like I still am in the weight room all the time because I just feel, that's just something that's always etched into myself. So like you don't really know the ceiling of that person. That's the hard part for like, you as a coach to really understand, and like you need to tell kids like, this is your ceiling. This is what I think you can get, but I don't know what exactly is in there that's going to get you to that next phase. But like if you tell guys, I see you here, I see you in this position. And for me personally, I always tell guys that they're higher than they are. So like
Right.
I'm not going to downplay. I'm like, say it's a kid who's, 150 pounds, he's 6 foot, and I'm like, I can see you throwing 90.
Right.
100%, but I'm gonna be straight up. You're not even close. You're not even close. But if we do this and this and this, you can get there. I know you can. So I like to kind of, if I'm talking to kids, I like to, tell them their like highest ceiling, where I see possibly where they could be, not just like a projected one.
Right.
You got to give kids confidence.
Yeah, like I've never enjoyed that question. Anytime they ask me, well, where do you think I can get to? I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
how to
it's-
work. I always try to put it back on them with a question, and they're going to answer, well, I'm going to work as hard as everybody. I was like, oh, I thought you wanted to be the best,
Mhm.
and then just have those conversations all the time. So no, that's absolutely the truth. So I guess the next question I would have is, one of the things I've always appreciated about you, which is why I listen to the pod and obviously have a relationship through Corey with you, is that you've done it all, right? So you did the player development side, you've done the strength side, right, and the conditioning side and the athleticism side, and obviously now you're with the data stuff, which was just absolutely incredible, and I find it so interesting. But let's go to the development side, right? I think one of the reasons why you're so good at analytics from the outside looking in is that you understand the baseball side first.
Mhm.
So let's go back to when you were at OBSA. You did the pitching development stuff with some pretty elite guys, right? And did a phenomenal job there. That's when I got to know you. That's what you were doing.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about the pitching development side and where you see pitching is currently, and a little bit about how we can take it to the next level.
Yeah, so currently with throwing right now, I mean, there's all different types of training. We were talking about earlier, like there's, you have heavy light balls, you have med balls, you have strength and conditioning foundations, and then you have just like this all-encompassing, word that people say biomechanics. It's you have kinematics and all this stuff. I think what is going to be what is going to make guys so good at baseball is just you need to really understand your movement quality as a human being. Like, if you're not moving well, then how do you expect to throw? How do you expect to throw if you're weak also? But for me personally, like I really just enjoy seeing how guys are moving down the mound. I think that's the number one thing that I look forward, within a throwing action. It's just how fluid are you moving about. I like, looking at numbers, but specifically you have to really look at the person as a whole. just look from the base down. And that's kind of how I always think about it is if guys are if you go into if we're in a facility right now, what's the first thing that you look at as a pitcher? Where does your eyes go to? And that's kind of what I ask people. And that's just that gives me a foundation. If they're like, oh, I look at arm sprawl, it's like, no. Like
Yeah.
that's not the first thing you're looking at. You're looking at specifically how are you finding the ground within the pitcher? How are they moving down the mound in a sense? I think the arm spiral is super, super important, but it's pretty much how are you creating that momentum down the mound and how is your body flowing? Say you're on a flat ground, how is your body flowing throughout the whole throw? Is it just very stiff? Is it very structured? Or is it free flowing? And that's the hard part about, um, understanding kind of the body within pitching is that everybody's so different. You look at the big leagues right now, there's so many different guys. Like everybody's throwing so awkwardly. And like there's actually the last guy who I had on my podcast, Lance Brodowski, he had a interesting YouTube video and it says, mechanics are dead. He's like, pitching mechanics are dead. And I kind of think of it, they are, but you still have to have a foundation. But he was just saying, it's all about movement quality. It's all about how are guys really comfortable in the sense of their bodies. So I think that's just a very big new wave of, what pitching should be like. That's why, like, I really love numbers and I think you need to use it as a coach. But if I'm a player specifically, I really want to look at, how fluid am I being down the mound? And then, my favorite thing is the weight room. Like, I really do think that's the most important, like one of the most important things besides data and all that is, are you recovering well? How are your endurances? How are your structures specifically in the weight room? I think that's just something that, people underestimate is, your body is going to be on the baseball field. So you need to be the best you possibly can in the weight room. And that just doesn't mean lifting heavy, moving weight as fast as you can. It's about what is your mobility like? How is your, I still classify as sleeping in the weight room. That a lot of people don't really think about it that way. Like sleeping is still one of the most important things you can do. And that's just like, my long-winded answer of, pitching's encompassing. And I know I go down rabbit holes in that sense, but I would really talk about, just movement quality is the most important thing for me.
That's funny you brought up like sleep being important. I read like this sleep study thing the other day where it helps your neurological sense. Like, so I mean, yes, it's important.
I haven't figured that one out yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say once I figure out how to sleep.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the next thing is obviously you're at Moeller, and you guys, it's one of the most impressive high school programs in the country. I think it's the nicest way to say it. You guys are just sensational with what you guys have developed there. Tell us a little bit about how you got on with Moeller, and how that process started.
So funny enough, I was at Pro4 Sports Performance interning there, and I saw they had something on their Instagram about, or it was actually Twitter, and they were like some baseball analytics. They wanted some baseball analytics guy, and I showed it to one of the guys who was there, and they're like, why don't you try it? And then also I talked to Eric Minshaw, who was a coach there a while ago, and he's like, why don't you do it? He's like, that'd be, like if anything pertaining towards Moeller is going to be good. So sent something to Coach Hell, and Coach Hell emailed me back right away, had an interview with them, and kind of the rest is history. And I think the best part about being within that organization is seeing the, how the culture really is, and just sitting back and seeing how, how important baseball really is there. It's super, super important. And everybody who's there loves it, and everybody there, you're expected a lot. So the expectations for everything, that's kind of what we tell when we're interning, like when we're interviewing people. It's like, this is Moeller High School. Like, we expect a lot. If you want to go be good, you can go to other high schools. Like, if you want to be amazing and we have a lot of expectations for you, you're a fit here. So, and I think that's one thing that I really love about Coach Hallett is he is one of the most organized human beings I've met. He wants every coach to be themselves, and he wants everybody to work as a team. So like we think about Moeller High School, like people think of varsity. He thinks the whole organization. You want freshmen, you want JV, and you want varsity to be the best they possibly can be, and that's one of the best parts. Like like I said about Coach Hell, is he's just one of the most amazing coaches that I've seen. Talking with, just how he talks with people, and how he expects a lot out of different players. But encompassing coming back to what we've done at Moeller. So first year, I had one intern, and we were really just getting video and trying to collect as much data as we could. It was a very interesting process because I had to self-edit every single video, every game, and that was not fun because it was it was 3 angles, or no, was it 2? It was 2 angles, and editing those were not fun. So next year, got another intern, had 2 interns, and we kind of did the same thing. I The next season, so this is going to be the third season, I ended up getting another intern. So now I have still 2 interns, and that other one graduated, and he's at OU, and he's doing a bunch of good stuff there now. But then going to year 4, um, I had 9 interns, but then I lost 2 of them to pro ball.
Yeah.
But as you can see, the progression of everything over the past years is, you got to get the right people. And then we're just trying to collect, like, video is the most important thing in high school. That's what I say. I think video is the most important thing before data. I really think guys need to see how they're going about within, their playing experience. And then now we're going more on the data side because we're very comfortable with video. But like I said, it's just we're trying to teach guys how to be, more or less professional and help them understand baseball operations. But at the end of the day, like, we're trying to give the coaches as much as they can. Like, we want to be a helping hand to these coaches. We want to help them and make their lives easy. And that's what I tell these guys. I'm like, our number one job is to make the coaches' lives easier. Like, yes, we want to create all these cool projects and everything, but the number one goal is keep the coaches happy and make their lives easier. And it's been good ever. That's the best rule I have, and overall, it's been going really good since then.
Well, I think it's really important that you emphasize the video, because one of part of our jobs as coaches, uh, it's passing that eye test. You know what I mean? I hate to say that because it's like my least favorite thing, but when we see something, we fix something, right? And I think that the kids really need to focus on something like that as well, is being able to see that feedback and then being able to fine tune with the analytics.
Yeah, so I'm in a different position, right? So like you got everything that you need to do this with
Yes.
9 interns and all that. You're at Fairmont, you guys got video, and you always talk about watching video in this. I'm a Dayton Christian with me and a couple dads who are really well intended. Right. So it's a totally different world, and it's funny to hear how different high school baseball is at different levels, right? Obviously you're at a really good D1 in Dayton at Fairmont, and obviously at Moeller. I'm a Dayton Christian, which we're Division 6 this year with the new rules, and it's just funny to see where we all are. And I would love to have video, and I still haven't figured out an affordable way that we can afford at Dayton Christian to get video, right? And I've talked to all the options that are currently out there, and I plan on doing it again at ABCA again this year to try to do that. So I just love this conversation. So obviously 2 of your guys left for pro ball. You know what I mean? So how does that make you feel, that process? Because I know your job, and you've always been a person who wants to grow everyone around you. So how did that make you feel when 2 of your interns got to go on to do pro ball now for analytics?
I mean, it feels really good. One of them we actually hired in, I think, September. So he really hasn't been here long. He had a really good background and everything. That's why I hired him. So, like, in that sense, I didn't have as much to do, and I'm just gonna be honest with that. So I was lucky enough that we're gonna have him until he leaves for spring training. And when we are doing all of our stuff, we have 2, professional guys on the staff still until March. So that's huge. But the other one, it was a long process. And, he came to me, and he was very, the best part about him is that he wanted to learn. And that's the hardest thing to get, is like he was responding to everything, and he really wanted to get into it. He really loves baseball. He loves the Reds, and that was the biggest thing he could go off. So, what we were building upon is, I had to get the understanding of, what do you know about baseball operations? What do you want to get into? And he's like, I don't know. I was like, well, you need to really understand what baseball operations are. And I was talking to Doug earlier about, I kind of explained this to guys. It's a kind of more or less not the best example, but it is. It's like somebody saying, hey, I want to be a doctor. And they're like, okay, cool. What do you want to go into? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I want to be a doctor. I want to operate. I'm like, you need a specialty. For example, like you have peds, you have ortho, you have, I'm blanking on what the heart doctor's name is specifically again, but you have those options.
Cardio, yeah.
Yes, cardio. That's what
Cardiologist.
I'm thinking of. So you have those options. And I was like, you need to find what you're good at. And that's something that I learned from the Astros is they came up to me and they're like, what are you good at? Straight up. And they're like, you need to know right away. You need to give us an answer. What are you good at? And that's why I was telling them, like, what are you going to sell yourself to organizations that you're best at? So his thing was advanced scouting. And I was like, okay, so how are we going to show teams that you're good at advanced scouting? And that's kind of, that's where you give them that opportunity to show that. And that was kind of the best part is, it can be some days were rough, some days were good about, just really getting him to that next level. And sometimes you're frustrated and you're like, why am I helping him that much? But he does all the work and he really worked hard to get that job and he ended up getting a pro job within 8 months, 8 or 10 months. So it's very possible to get that job that you want within 10 months, but it's a lot of work and you really need to progress on that.
Yeah, so I guess the next thing is kind of like a full scale, like just overview. So if you're talking to a 25-year-old guy who's interested or a 14-year-old who wants to know what it is, what is data analytics? What would your answer be to the person who doesn't know anything? How would you describe what you do?
How I would describe is what I do is that's a good question. So I would take in a sense, what are your favorite things to do? Talk about that, ask a person. So in this question, are they interested in baseball or are they not? They are interested in baseball?
For sure.
Okay. So I'm going to say, okay, it's a 14-year-old and he's like, I want to do data. Like, what is data analytics? And I'm like, okay, so you like baseball. What is your favorite thing about baseball? And they're like, oh, I love hitting. And they're like, okay, have you looked at all the statistics? Have you looked at OPS? Have you looked at slugging? Have you looked at just, average runs, stolen bases? Have you looked at that? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, how would you like to project that specific player and predict their future? And I'm like, oh, that'd be sweet. And it's like, that's what we're trying. That's what that is what analytics is trying to do. You're trying to project a person to what they're going to be in the future. And also, it's another way of analyzing somebody without just looking at it straight in the eye, like straight in the face. I really like, I like using the phrase, telling a story with data. You need to be able to tell a story within these points for, like I was like we were talking about the kid who loves hitting. Tell me tell me why he's a good player. And if you can do that with the stats, then you're talking data analytics. And then they get intrigued and they're like, oh, and then they try to find players who are similar. And then they're like, oh, maybe I want to get into fantasy baseball. And then I'm like, that's data analytics in a whole.
100%.
So,
Nice.
and if they're very interested in that, and then I'm like, okay, then do you want to do it in a real situation instead of fantasy baseball? And that's the other issue is, fantasy baseball is awesome, but like, do you want to do real life baseball and like work in a specific, like for example, Moeller, like these are real kids. How do we get them better? What are we going to do? What are the processes? And if they're interested, then that's how you sell the kid right there. And now they understand and they can go to their dad and say, hey, I want to be in data analytics. And he's like, well, why? He's like, well, I want to be able to analyze, players. I like these players and I want them to get better. So that's kind of the whole encompassing circle of
Yeah,
data
no, I
analytics.
think sometimes you got to be able to describe it to somebody who doesn't know what it is, you know what
Yes.
I mean, and those things so they can understand it. Because you may get a whole nother group of people who are like, man, I'm really interested in this now. Now I want to do more research. And, I would tell them to reach out to you because obviously you're, kind of the expert in our area for this, in my opinion.
I'm just adding. I caught like part of the blast sensor presentation at ABCA last year. Kind of funny we're mentioning we're going to be going in a few days. And I heard him kind of explain analytics, but not the way you just did it. So I kind of want to appreciate the way you explained it because I feel like that's a good way to explain analytics.
Yeah, because like you have people throw out the words of quantitative analysis, and that just blows people away. And it's like all quantitative analysis in simple terms is like, do you guys know mean, median, mode?
Yeah.
Then you know quantitative analysis.
There you go.
That's it's just a very, very complex business word of saying that you know how to look at numbers.
Yeah.
And that's, people are like, well, it seems like a lot. It can go very deep, but if like understand percentages, understand mode, median, and mean, and like you're good for about 50% of it right there.
Yeah, makes all sense in the world. So a little bit with this, I mean, obviously we at the pro level, there's books, this and that, how it was used and those things. How do you use this to help the high school kid? How do you help this high school junior? You know, give us one example maybe of how you can help a high school kid develop this way.
So perfect question. And that's where I like a lot of people ask me, they're like, how do you do data analytics in high school? So what's very hard is, you're thinking of analytics, you're thinking of scouting and projecting players or picking them for a specific team. So we can't do that obviously because we're not buying and selling players. And at the end of the day, for advanced scouting, you can do it, but there's only so much data. So what is the other option? The other option is we need to develop them. So like what you were saying with Blast, that is the number one thing that you can do for a player is, collect the player development aspect data. And in high school, that's what we're trying to do. So like we're really trying to help kids understand themselves so they can attack their opponents.
Right.
I think that's something that has taken me about 2 years to really understand is that for the high school level, like if you're trying to scout the opponents with data, like it's not going to happen. There's not enough. So then it's like, okay, then we have so much data on ourselves. Why don't we kind of scout ourselves, find the weaknesses, and then pinpoint those, and then possibly, progress what are like the lowest hanging fruit at
I
the
love
end
you
of the day.
mentioning that.
I think that's the best way to go about it in high school. And that's where a lot of people get confused is, you just have all this, they think they have all this data on other teams, but there's only so much limited that you can use.
Yeah, that makes all sense in the world. The next thing I would like to follow up on is so you're a really competitive guy, right? You've always been successful. You've always been extremely competitive. That's why you're successful in pretty much everything that you do. Um, doing the analytics part, how has that scratched that competitive itch with Moeller? And how connected do you feel to the team, like not being on the field day in and day out with them at practice?
So for me personally, I think about, ways that we can, like we were talking about this earlier, is I still love the Moneyball quote about what's the problem. And I try to tell that to interns. I'm like, look at our organization as a whole and say, where is there a problem? And then say, what is the problem? How can we fix it, in the senses of what we have available. So for example, we were talking about, when we presented to the Milwaukee Brewers, we were selected for our findings on we were trying to quantify ground balls to help our pitchers understand their hops and help our coaches put these pitchers in a better situation. So this is going to be the first year that we really implement it. We were collecting data all last year, and now we can finally use it, and then we know it's a really good idea. So kind of within that, that's kind of where my competitive edge comes from is like I try to find, ways to help as much as I possibly can. And then when you get to like the coding aspect, sky's the limit. You can do anything you want. And I think that's kind of where like my background and my family's background is engineering. So I kind of have that sense of, what can we build with this? You have unlimited finding, like you have unlimited power within coding, and what can we build to make the organization more efficient? And then kind of on the, splitting between the, not being on the field all the time. It is a little bit hard because I would like to be, because the first year I was there a lot more and I got to be a lot more comfortable with the players and everything. But, just with, life and how everything's going, I'm able to do, kind of a hybrid role. But the biggest thing is like now I get to tell my interns to be what I was my first year. Be more be communicative with the players. Just talk with them. They're normal guys. Like, just because you aren't you aren't playing at Moeller doesn't mean you can not be cool with them and talk to them, understand who they are. Like that's part of life. You need to talk and understand a human being. And that's kind of where, where that kind of gap comes. I do miss talking with guys every single day, but I want them to have that experience and I want them to grow personally. And I'm like, you guys really need to understand these guys because I'm not going to be there all the time. But, say you see a little thing within their data, say you see a little bit stuff within their swing, like just talk with them and tell them that. And they might actually, they might be like, oh, really? And if you can pinpoint that, then they might actually use it.
Right.
So I try to, be kind of push them a little bit to be what I was my first year with them.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, you talked a little bit about that Brewers competition where you guys did the study of ground balls. I would love for you to go much more in depth into that. How did you guys come up with that idea? What went through that process and all the work you did? And then what was it like presenting to a major league team your findings?
Very innovative, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So first, I had the idea of when I was talking to Casey Demko, and I tried to take it more into a pitcher as sense. So I live and die by ground balls aren't all created equally because not all fly balls are created equally. Some are outs, some are home runs. We have launch angle, we have exit velocity. I mean, they're not all created equally. So why aren't ground balls the same way? Organizations talk about we want a lot of single ball pitchers because they create ground balls, and it's like, well, but how well are those? So that was kind of where my thought went to, and I was like, well, at a high school level, we have this beautiful, and like I remember I was standing at the field one day, and I was like, we have this beautiful field, and then we're going to play at some terrible fields.
Yeah.
So how is that going to help the coaches in a sense? So what we thought of was we're going to combine those two ideas and quantify ground balls to where we want pitchers to know specifically what pitch they're throwing that can create these ground balls and what ground balls pitchers really create, so coaches can pick who they want to put in specific situations. So that was the whole idea. We also made it to where we were trying to work on shifts. We added like specific shifts and seeing where outlines of spray charts and everything. It wasn't that crazy in a sense for the spray charts, but that was the biggest thing is we wanted to understand that idea of how can we help the coaches in that sense. And when I was talking earlier, we collected all the data and we present the findings. And this year is the year that we really want the coaches to use it. And that's something that our interns are going to do. And they're going to have to talk with the coaches. How are we going to do this? What are we going to do for this to really happen? And that's something that they will, it'll be very good for them. But what we did is we created this application through our Shiny. One of my friends, he helped us develop the app because he's really good at it, and I had the idea and worked together, and finally got it finished. It took a long time because we had an idea and we scrapped it completely because it was not functional for a real game because the game moves quick. So we were just doing, batted ball data, and a guy cannot be 100% focused and they can do it. So that was kind of the way we wanted to do. We didn't want to have three guys watching every single pitch and doing the same thing. It's like, how can that person be different? So that's kind of the encompassing sense of the app, how we created it. But the presentation itself, so what we did, we created we did a PowerPoint presentation, kind of honed in, what were the points of it, why we created it, how it became into into real life. And then we just went through and gave a short, analysis of what it is. It was a 5-10 minute video, and then we just sent it to the Brewers. And we were picked a part of the player development skit. So we got to present it in front of about 150 to 160 to 200 people, and also including the Brewers front office. So that was a really cool scenario. And the biggest thing my intern said was he's like, these people are just throwing out random questions, man. He's like, I don't know how you're answering these. And I was like, well, when you do a podcast for so long, you can kind of figure it out. Mm-hmm. But it was a really cool experience. But they now, with baseball operations, they want to see what people are producing. So they have these round tables now where you submit your ideas. And if you get picked, you get to present in front of the baseball operations group. And I know the Dodgers are doing one now. The Brewers did one last year, and the Reds always have they always have one every year. It's called the Hackathon, and they give you a specific data set, and they say, this is the problem, fix it, and you submit your answers, and if you win, you get to present in front of the front office, and it's just another way to get exposure. So that was something that we did last year, and that's why, now for now on, we have every single intern submit a research project throughout the year.
That's amazing. So It sounds like you've had a lot going on. Probably a busy 2024. I assume. Tell us what's next.
What's next? Well, number one in 2025 is I'm getting married, so I'm very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's the planning's always been, it's a lot.
Oh, I just
but
got
it's-
married this past summer, so good luck.
So that's number one thing. But second, I'm going to be finishing my master's in business analytics program. So that will be, last stretch of it. It will be good. And then within Moeller, try to, help the organization as much as I can and have these interns, up to date with everything and have them, get them the best possible experience they have and get them, something that's applicable for their resume to help them in real life. And then also if they want an internship, get them the internship that they want within baseball operations that can help them get to the, the goal that they want, the job that they want. But otherwise that, kind of same more or less every year, just kind of, just enjoy kind of every day, take it one step at a time, and just do stuff that you enjoy and do them as often as you can. So that's kind of what's going next.
So my final question is something I ask every guest. Obviously we love this game, so if you could change one thing about the game as it currently sits at any level, what's that one thing that you would like to see changed?
At every level, I think honestly, well, because you kind of gave me the question a little bit ahead of hand. So I was thinking more or less at the professional level,
Any level.
at the professional level, I really do think hitters should challenge the pitches. I really do like that idea because think about it in a sense that a player's value can go up based on their guessing. I
love that answer.
I love that. I love that idea because
I don't mind the challenge as much. I like that idea.
well, because think about it in this sense of the pro level. Person I always go to is the person who wants this so bad is number one, Jonathan India. How much value is he going to get increased? Lots. And how much is Alex Bergman's value going to increase from that?
Yeah.
So I really do love that. And then on the pitching side, I really just, I like on the baseball as a whole for, what could change is I just really think that there needs to be 100% limit, way more limit on innings for pitchers. And I really just think that I don't think you should ever be a pitcher only until you're a junior in high school. I really don't. I really think there should never ever say we're at a youth tournament and little Jimmy's like, I'm a pitcher only. I'm like, no. I'm like, there should never be pitcher onlys. Like, you're an athlete. You need to play every position and you need to understand the game as a whole. So I'm a very big believer in you need to play. There should never be POs at the younger age. I really am a huge proponent of that just because you really need to play the game and be an athlete.
And I think we purely enjoy the game at those stages of our lives as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I guess, taking yourself off the field only as a pitcher, it kind of screws with you a little bit.
Mhm.
I also like that you hit on the challenge system. I think it's a two-way. I think it should be a two-way system as well.
Mhm.
You got some pitchers out there that get, they get screwed over.
Yeah,
I think
pitchers get plenty. We give them enough.
whatever. Whatever. Anyway, that's about all the time we have here today. I just want to thank you so much for coming on. It was a great interview. I had a blast. Doug, anything before we?
Thank you so much for coming on, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you guys.
Absolutely. And if you guys would like to see more stuff like this, you can catch us on Spotify and YouTube and also Apple. To never catch a notification or catch an update from us, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All right, boys.
It's America's favorite pastime. Come on, let's have a good time. Slinging seeds. Yeah, we're just slinging seeds.